Good evening, Top fans. It's Bill from Top Fan Rivalry here, back with my friend Dave and Jackson and Viliami. It is now the end of the season, and we are now officially done with the postseason. The right team, I will have to say, won the World Series. Sorry, boys. I'm sorry, but hey, listen, it's been 32 years. V, you can wait a little bit on the Angels. You got another 15 or 18 years you got to wait out. But there's a lot to talk about tonight. So last week when we did this, we didn't know who was going to be the World Series champions, and a lot of crazy things happened in Game 6. So I'm just going to open this up and we'll see where it goes, fellas. Where do we want to start? V, do you want to start us with Blake Snell? What do you think about him getting taken out?
I think it was a absolutely horrible call. I'll be surprised if the Rays manager lasts another season. I feel fairly confident that he's not going to be the manager after the next 2 years. I give him 2 years tops. But it's hard because you see all these, you see all the stats and everything, and everyone tends to focus on the stats. One thing I didn't realize, I was so heated in the moment because like every sports fan loves hearing those two words, Game 7. Everyone loves hearing it. So I was rooting for Game 7, but it didn't happen. Maybe next year. But with Snell, it's hard because if you look back at all of his starts, even when he won the Cy Young in 2018, let's see, he went 21-5,
Mm-hmm.
and he had, out of the 31 starts, he had 19 quality starts. He averaged about 6 innings a start.
Wow.
So if you look at that average, it was 5.8, just doing the math. But that kind of tells you that he averages about 6 innings a start. And he ended up going 21-5. So that kind of tells you something. But you have a former Cy Young as your starting pitcher in a must-win game. And he's dealing. He got the top players on the Dodgers out multiple times. He was on fire. But I thought it was interesting. You pull him when he's just on a roll and he's visibly upset, and then they pan over to Mookie and he gets a little smile. Just cracks a smile, and you knew it just ignited that fire under the Dodgers, and they just went off. So, I mean, I think it's a horrible decision. Obviously, Dodger fans thought it was a great decision. But, yeah, I don't think he's going to be a manager anymore after the next 2 seasons.
Well, I have to tell you, Cody Bellinger used the word gross in the post game. He said what Blake Snell was throwing was gross. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting. We'll come back to that. Jackson, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that analytics are overrated. I apologize to Billy Bean if he ever watches this, but his analytics are all this crap, and it's gotten out of hand. I understand it helps. You know, we were talking about the shift, and it's like, it's nice that you can position your fielders and they don't have to move half the time. Balls get hit right at them. But, like, if you go into a game saying analytics, like, will decide my game, what's the point of even, having a starting pitcher?
Mm-hmm.
I think the eye test beats everything. A guy's looking good. He's pitching well. He gives up a single. If he gave up like a double or a triple, maybe not even like a solo. If he gave up a solo home run, I would have left him in. But if he's looking that good, like he gives up a single and you're going to go out there and pull him, that's just deflating, not to just him, just the whole team. I imagine like the bullpen was surprised to get the call. Like, oh, hey, like you're in. He surrenders a double, throws a wild pitch. Like, I think it was Anderson, right?
Yeah, Anderson.
He's visibly shaken
Mm-hmm.
after surrendering the double, coming in, giving up a double. I just don't think he was in the mindset to be in that game watching Blake Snell pitch. I agree with Viliami. Tampa Bay should fire Kevin Cash. They should have fired. I would have even waited for the game to be done. I would have fired him right there. Been like, "What are you doing?"
I mean, look at the White Sox. They fired Renteria, and he was a finalist for the Manager of the Year. And what did they do today? Once they found out he was a finalist, they congratulated him on their social media page.
Well, Dave,
As
now
they should.
we just mentioned the White Sox, so I mean, I'm sure you're dying here to say something, but
Let him jump in.
the you guys poking the bear. Dave, go ahead. Go ahead. What do you think about the
Well,
Blake Snell White Sox?
I agree to an extent. I think it was a really bad decision, but I also am expecting that it wasn't Kevin Cash's decision 100%. Somebody else was pulling the levers behind the scenes, sitting in front of their laptop. So there had to be someone else in analytics, someone else in the management team that, is feeding those decisions to the manager. The manager should have the backbone to say, and the authority to say, you know what, I don't agree with you. I feel the way this game is going, we're gonna let it go the way it is. And obviously that didn't happen. So I doubt it was Kevin Cash's decision 100%. A lot of these managers these days have been recruited because they're okay taking input from the guys behind the laptops and not being the old school guy who's going to be, a little bit less open to that. So I doubt Kevin Cash is going anywhere in the next 2 or 3 years. He's a really good manager. He did a lot with that team. The problem with that game, aside from the fact that they didn't ride their starter like they should have, is they can't hit. So they need to provide runs to their starter. You could have had Steve Carlton. You could have had Justin Verlander. You could have had anybody out there. And if they don't score any runs, that guy's going to lose. So their offense let them down big time. And I think that goes a little bit unnoticed.
The Dodgers gave up no runs in 7 innings as a bullpen game. And I agree with you. My frustration level from a Dodger fan, I loved it. Okay, because if you watched Mookie on the on-deck circle as Blake Snell was coming out for the 6th inning, Mookie didn't have the giddy up that he normally has. He just mentally, because he had been made look like a fool the last 2 at bats. And then Austin comes and gets his base hit, and then Kevin Cash comes out, and Mookie had a different giddy up in his step when he went to home plate. And I agree with you guys. I think Anderson didn't look like he was in the game, but I also agree with Dave. Somebody asked me today, and I'm man enough to admit this: do I think Dave Roberts or Kevin Cash managed better that series? And I it's a toss-up. I think Kevin Cash may have outmanaged Dave Roberts. When Dave Roberts pulled Dustin May in the game prior and brought in Victor Gonzalez because of that 3-batter rule, he brought in Victor Gonzalez to face Chow, and Kevin Cash immediately pulled Chow out and brought somebody else in. And so Victor Gonzalez had to face a righty. So it was a lefty-righty matchup. I agree with Dave 100% though. The offense, the defense didn't let them down. It was the offense that let them down. I mean, they had a combined strikeouts of 11 that game. You can't, in 27 outs, you can't strike out 11 times and expect good things to happen. They weren't even really moving people over. The Dodgers were playing flat-footed even in some senses. They weren't trying to bunt to get on. But I disagree with the analytics side. You never take out the human aspect of it. Remember, those top 4 batters, Mookie, Corey, JT, and Muncy, were all combined 0 for 8 against Blake with 7 strikeouts. So roll the dice. What happens if Mookie gets up and he strikes out again? Now you got 2 outs and you got Corey coming up and it's lefty on lefty. I mean, I'm old school. I'm of the opinion, hey, pitcher, let him pitch 130 pitches and come back 3 days later. Right? But
well, that's what these guys grow up dreaming of. They want to be the dude in those games. And, to have your manager take that out of your hands is kind of bad as long as you're performing. I mean, this isn't the middle of July when they need to keep your pitch count down. This is when you go out there and you leave it all out there. And that's what they all want to do.
Well, see, that was the frustrating thing about Kershaw's start when they in Game 5. What was his name? The guy with the bow tie. Kenny Rosenthal. Kenny Rosenthal says Clayton's going to face a maximum of about 21 batters, and I'm thinking, why? He's not going to pitch for another 4 months. Why are you having him on a pitch count? Why do you have it? If he's dealing, let him deal. It doesn't matter. There is no tomorrow. Are you kidding?
Oh, and that's exactly why all of your starters are usually available in those games to come in. The bullpen is everybody.
Yep.
Because it's all hands on deck. And it should be, again, you got to ride your horse and leave him out there and let him give you every last ounce of what he's got. And Blake Snell still had a lot in the tank.
Yeah. I think Kevin Cash, I do think Kevin Cash will be back to manage a World Series at some point. And I think he's learned from this one. Dave Roberts took it on the chin a couple years. I didn't realize this, boys. Did you guys know this? V, you may know this, but do you guys know this? 2016, the Dodgers get knocked out of the playoffs in the championship series against the Cubs, who go on to win the World Series. 2017, they get knocked out by the Astros, who won the World Series. 2018, they get knocked out by the Red Sox, who won the World Series. 2019, they got knocked out by the Nationals in the divisional series, who won the World Series. Like, there's some experience that's there. I get frustrated by, taking the analytics totally in play. I mean, I think Kevin Cash is sitting back on his couch going, give me 20 minutes back in Arlington back. All I want is 20 minutes back, and we're good to go. So, V, tell me what you thought about Urias, 24-year-old guy. I mean,
he was good. I mean, that whole series just unreal. It's crazy to think that he got picked by the Dodgers when he was like 16.
16, yeah.
He's been with them the entire time, and he couldn't come up and get into the majors because of the age rule. But I mean, the kid's unreal. He goes from being a top prospect, being just unreal, and then he gets into the league and he struggles, and then comes back, figures it out, changes things up a bit, and then just dominates in the postseason. I mean, it's kind of cool to see how he struggled at one point and then just completely turned it around. I mean, you look at, it's kind of like the comparison to Kershaw. Kershaw was known for choking in the playoffs and then just having horrible starts, but then started switching it around and just started becoming really good towards the end of the playoffs. But it's cool to see you see people struggle, but then they figure it out. They work out their mechanics, and then and no one remembers the bad times. They just remember the good times and the times that they dominate.
So let me ask you this question. I'm going to ask this to Jackson. I'm going to ask this to Dave. If you are a manager, it doesn't matter what team. Let's say you're Dave Roberts, okay, or you're managing the Dodgers. When Randy Arozarena comes up to plate, doesn't matter how many people are on. Do you walk him, or do you let him swing away?
Depends who I have on the mound.
The guy's the hottest guy on the planet. Doesn't matter at this point.
I think it does. He does have a tendency to strike out.
Okay.
Some pitchers, I mean, if nobody's on base, you pitch to him. Solo home runs never hurt anyone. If you have first base open, might as well set up a force out. But just kind of looking at the Rays in the series, I would have walked them. They weren't hitting at all. And going back to Dave's point, you can't hit if you can't score. It reminded me of no matter how good your pitcher is, Walter Johnson, who's very old school, Washington Senators. He lost 26 games by a score of 1-0.
Wow. Good pull.
Yeah. And he lost 65 games in which his teams failed to score a run. So he pitched a game where his team got shut out 65 times. Hall of Famer, held the strikeout record before Nolan Ryan. So, yeah. I mean, you could have one of the greatest pitchers of all time, but if you can't win if you can't score is the old adage, huh?
Yeah.
So I think in the series, it might have paid off just to Walker Rosarena every time he came to the plate and made someone else do something for once.
Yeah. What do you think, Dave?
No, I agree. I mean, I'm all for the situational baseball and making someone else beat you. I think, it'll be interesting to see that kid played, some of the best baseball we've seen in a long time from somebody completely unexpected. But how does the league adjust to him? How do all these pitchers spend their winter watching film on him and get him out next year? It'll be interesting. I'm surprised in that example that Walter Johnson didn't murder a few of his teammates for not scoring for him.
How does that conversation go out in the locker room?
Or at
Boys,
least,
can you just score once, please?
At least take him out behind the dugout and beat him.
Yeah, do you not? It's funny, Dave, that you mentioned film and things like that. When I was watching him, I thought of, to bring up an old school Angels reference, I thought of Jared Weaver. When Jared Weaver came up, he came up mid-July, something like that, and he went like 7-1. People just couldn't hit him. They couldn't figure him out. But then people watched film on him over the offseason, and then he came out and went like 4-8 before the All-Star break the next season or something ridiculous like that. And I think that that's what's going to happen with Randy. The guy there's two guys that I really liked on the Rays that I thought made the series. I thought Margot with his base running, stealing, even the attempted steal at home. Fellas, if there's anybody on the mound except for Cooperstown Clayton, that's probably a balk because they won't think to step off. And I loved Kiermaier. Man, Kiermaier was all over the place doing all the basic things, right?
Question though about that steal home.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a stadium full of fans,
Mm-hmm.
does Clayton even hear Muncy yell "step off"? Because on TV you
Mm-hmm.
heard him say
Right.
"step off," but
Right.
if there was a full stadium, would he have gotten him out?
That's a great question. What do you guys think?
Stadium, no.
Yeah.
This is loud.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Dave?
Like any stadium is going to be hard because I think just even going. I remember, Bill, you took me to my first hockey game, the Kings versus the Ducks. I mean, it was so loud in there, you couldn't even hear yourself think. It was so loud.
It's a tough one. That's hard to figure out if he needed to be told or if he would have got it on his own. I want to know why Max Muncy wasn't charging that ball a little harder. Get rid of it a little quicker.
Yeah. The V, you asked a good question. Dave's right. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But if you watch the film too, you see Muncy pointing too. So hopefully Kershaw does that. Did you guys, by chance, did you guys see the Jimmy Kimmel interview that Jimmy Kimmel did with Clayton Kershaw and Cody Bellinger?
Was Cody Cody smoking something that day too?
Yeah. So Dave, did I send this interview to you, Dave?
Don't remember it, no.
First thing that Jimmy Kimmel says is he says, "So was it easier winning the World Series when the other team wasn't cheating?" That's how he starts the interview. And then he looks at Cody later on and he goes, "Cody, how high are you during the games?" Because they show Cody's just like,
yeah.
Look, and Cody goes, "I'm not high during the game." And so but to that point in that interview, Jimmy asked that same question, and Clayton says that Muncy was pointing, and he heard him, but Muncy was also pointing too. But you're right. Would Clayton have thought to step off? Question is would Walker Buehler or would Arias think to step off? Probably not. So but I liked the aggressive play, and I loved Kiermaier. He was all over the place. He did a lot of good things. Couple other highlights. I think Manfield was drunk when he gave out the MVP award to Cody. To Corey. Anybody else agree with me?
He looked like he was having himself a good time in Texas.
He did. The other thing that I thought was interesting about the game, and V mentions Game 7, and you know what? Game 7s are fun as long as you don't have skin in the game. If it's not your team, Game 7s are fantastic. But when it's your team, your cardiologist loves it, but you hate it, right? And so is at the beginning of the playoffs, with all the teams that were in it, and you look at the bracket, would have you thought that those two teams would have survived, and would have you thought that the Dodgers would have won? Curious. Dave, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think I was on the Rays bandwagon the whole time. It says something that the Dodgers could beat them. It was a 6-game series, but toward the end there, it didn't seem as competitive as a 6-game series. But that team was good enough to take everyone else out. So that's impressive, and it's impressive that the Dodgers beat him kind of as easily as they did, and it didn't go 7, and it really wasn't a really tough, ride at the end there. So that's what you're going to hear a lot from the Rays. They just, like most teams, they have a few holes, and if they can fill them up, they'll be in great shape. How about how they did on that Chris Archer trade?
Yeah. Yeah. Chris Archer's a free agent now with Pittsburgh?
Yeah, he's a free agent. They let him go. They basically cut him loose, and they lost Austin Meadows and Glasnow in that trade.
Mm-hmm. And somebody needs to teach Chris how to wear a hat. It goes on forward, right? Jackson, what do you think about the playoffs?
The playoffs, I thought they were great. I wasn't a big fan of the expanded playoffs. I thought it was really lame adding a couple extra teams. Mostly because the Yankees got in that way. But I hope that doesn't stick around, because I really like them having days off, and I think that would have changed the dynamic of this playoffs. This playoffs was very condensed, so it forced, and I noticed in the Braves-Dodgers series, it forced a lot of very questionable pitching decisions at some times.
On both sides, I agree.
On both sides, yeah. And
Agreed.
Even in the Tampa Bay-Houston series, teams had to go all hands on deck starting like Game 4. Like you said, when you have skin in the series, it's like, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah.
I thought it was a pretty good playoffs. Probably the best ending to a shortened season you can have. Competitive wise, I'm usually pretty happy as long as the Yankees don't win the World Series. So
There you go. What about you, B?
I think it would have been better if the Angels did their job and swept the Dodgers at the end of the season. Would have been a better postseason because we wouldn't have the asterisks in it.
Angels could have made it to the World Series, man.
It's true. Would have been nice. It's a good fantasy, though. Maybe next.
You should boot up MLB The Show later. You can live out that fantasy.
That's true. I liked it. I thought it was fun. I do wish that Cleveland beat the Yankees, because I wanted to see my boy Shane go further in the playoffs. But it was good. I like it. I'm all for Game 7, any sport, just because it's fun to watch. And then it just helps me realize, you know what, life is good. And then once one sports ends, it's like, oh crap, back to reality. back to a boring season.
That's the truth.
Yeah, it's hard. But I mean, I love it. I think anytime baseball is being played, it's a good day.
It's true. So speaking of that, as we're wrapping up, let's talk rules. Okay, so we had some interesting rules that came in. Jackson just alluded to one of them, and it was on my notes. So we had the expanded playoffs, which I just think just totally sucks, because you take a team like the Dodgers and you face them up against the Brewers, and are you kidding me? We got a chance to get knocked out by a team that doesn't even belong there. So let's talk expanded playoffs, possible DH in both leagues, runner on second in extra innings, and the 3-pitcher rule. What do you guys think? I mean, all these rules, obviously it was to shorten the time thing. And also one last question too, as far as the rules are concerned. Let's wrap up by talking about JT too. What do you guys think about him going on the field after quote unquote testing positive? So tell me about the rules. I mean, I get it. It's to make the game faster and it's to keep the audience there. But like V said, anytime there's baseball on, there's a good day, right?
It's
So what do you guys think?
Okay, I'll go. I'll make it quick. So I don't care for the runner on second in extra innings. I think it's dumb. I get the whole pace of the game, trying to increase the pace of the game. I love free baseball. I mean, I watch baseball with my wife, and every time it's after the ninth inning, we always look at each other. Sweet, free baseball. I mean, it's just fun. Love watching the games that go into the 15th, 16th inning. Universal DH, I like it. It gets teams a better shot of actually doing something great. You look at National League. I mean, you look at it, it definitely gives them an advantage because they can actually have a player that can make some noise.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's fun to see the pitchers. Like, it's fun to see Clayton with the bat in the batter's box. But if you have someone on the bench like Jock Peterson who can crush the ball, I'd rather have him in the game batting than Clayton in the game. I mean, I think it's good for baseball. Expanded playoffs, don't care for it that much. I like the off days just because it's fun. I feel like with expanded baseball, it accelerates it a bit, and we're supposed to have more baseball throughout the year, not less baseball throughout the year. So that's my take on that. And with Justin, I feel like he just wore a mask. Totally cool with it.
Yeah. What do you think, Jackson?
Yeah, so my guy boys, the expanded playoffs are lame. I'm going to be in opposition to the universal DH because I think you should be a baseball player and be able to field your position and bat. The pitcher in the NL adds a dynamic where National League managers have generally been better at managing than American League managers because you have to learn how to double switch, learn when to keep your pitcher in or pull them, learn when to pinch hit, bring that big bat off the bench, to create a matchup and create a dilemma for the other manager. It's that extra added mind game I really like. And pitchers also promote small ball, bunting runners over, not grounding into double plays, which is good for the game. It's better than just having, let's see, you got all those DHs out there, poor Albert. I know we're going to talk about Pujols in a future episode, but guy can't move anymore. All he does is stand in the batter's box and hope they hit a home run. It's not very exciting. Usually with the DH, it's usually a home run or bust with those kinds of guys. The runner on second rule, all I'm going to say is that's rec league softball, and that's where it should stay. We're not in a time limit. Free baseball is great. I agree with V. One of the best games I've ever been to in person was the Angels-Indians game that went 17 innings.
Uh-huh.
We started in the upper deck. We were in the first row of the stands come the 14th inning, heckling the crap out of those Indians outfielders. It was great. Most fun I've ever had with my dad and my brothers at a baseball game.
Love it.
Justin Turner, I think it's really weird that they let him play, even though his test was inconclusive. I thought it could have been avoided altogether, even if there was just that possibility. Just the league office could have just been like, hey, don't play him until he tests negative. And that would have kind of shielded them from that whole dilemma. Or like V said, just like wear a mask. Like, I don't have a problem with him being out there. It's just, if you know you got it, you got to be a little more careful. I understand you just won the World Series, but it sounds like a fine to me.
Good comments. Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, I have to agree on most of that. I mean, the guy on second is something they do in club baseball. They call it the California tiebreaker. So whether you like that in California or not, you might not want that label, but I don't like it in the pro ball. You got to earn your runs. The problem is, you're trying to pander to television and pander to people who are there for the action. They're the ones that go to the NBA to watch 3-pointers instead of the actual game. They're there to watch home runs. They're there to watch action, and they're trying to give them more action and get the game done. So I do like the idea. I agree with Jackson. You know, if you're a baseball player, you should be able to play baseball and, you know, put a bat in your hand. You should be able to put a good at bat together. However, at this level, that's not what most people want to see. They want to see the best players in the best situations, the top situations. So, you know, if I've got, you know, in my case, maybe I've got Yohan Moncada on the bench. Maybe he's off that day, and if there's a situation where I want to pull him in, I'm gonna. Or, you know, you platoon on the DH. You know, I've got Abreu, I've got Grandal, I've got James McCann, I've got Encarnacion. I can run those guys out there all the time. So I think, you know, that's an American League example, but, you know, I'm sure the Cubs or some of these other teams would like to have some of their guys hitting instead of sitting when the pitcher's on there. So I kind of like the DH. The expanded playoffs, I'm not a fan. I think there's probably a creative way to make something like that work, where maybe you have like a play-in tournament. I don't know. You know, the 162 game regular season is too long. So if they shortened it and did a play-in tournament, it might create some more excitement and more viewers and more people that follow baseball.
What do you think about JT?
Yeah, it was just dumb on his part. I totally understand it. I mean, if you're in that situation, you're going out there no matter what. There ain't anybody stopping you. But just wear the mask.
Yeah. I agree with what everybody's already said. You're a ball player, you're a ball player. Go DH. I also agree with Jackson that where he says National League managers have to manage in a different, you know, scenario, know how to double switch and things. The runner on second, I hate being a former pitcher. I absolutely hate it because if I'm coming in the 10th inning, I've already got a guy in the scoring position. I haven't even thrown a pitch. And so it just adds an extra level of stress on the pitcher and on the arm and things like that. It's just, as John Smoltz was talking about a lot during the playoffs, especially in the Dodger Brave series, Jackson was talking about stress pitches, right? And when you have a runner on second, let's say we're in early September and you need to win 10 out of 15 games to make sure that you get in the playoffs, and you go into 3 nights in a row where you have extra inning games, your pitchers are going out there and they don't got a shot to win because they got to run there on second already. It's kind of lame. So I'm, you know, universal DH. The expanded playoffs, no. Dave's right. 162 games is a lot of games. If you're going to do the expanded playoffs to create the excitement, then you've got to cut down the season. But you're not going to do that because you have all these records and everything like that. That's just not going to happen. As far as Justin Turner is concerned, I think I sent this to Dave in a text message. If I were 36 years old and my contract were up this season, this is my 3rd time to the World Series, and it's my 1st time winning it, knowing that I may not be back in a Dodger uniform, which is a slim possibility the Dodgers will re-sign him. I'm pretty confident in that. It would take the United States Secret Service presidential detail to keep me off that field. I'm going on that field because, like Dave, I understand where he's at, but again, wear the mask. Some of the things on Twitter I've read some stuff on Twitter and on Instagram, and it's nasty. I mean, Justin Turner, from my understanding, is getting death threats. I mean, that's ridiculous. And so just wear your mask. But it's, man, a lot to talk about from this year. So, okay, a 15-second wrap-up. Via, you want to say anything in your last 15 seconds?
Yeah, Angels 2021 playoffs.
Playoffs. Notice, boys, how he didn't say winning a playoff series. He just said playoffs.
Gotta start small.
Jackson, 15.
Turn big.
I know this is more of like next week stuff, but the non-tender candidates this year were kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Guys like Charlie Morton. I know Chris Narcher was non-tendered. Colton Wong. So it's going to be an even crazier offseason, pretty fitting for 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really excited to talk about that. It's going to be fun baseball talk.
Will be fun baseball talk. Dave,
Yeah.
last 15.
If anybody has any money to spend after
Yeah.
all of this. I'm looking for the White Sox to go and make a splash here and get a starting pitcher and maybe a right fielder and bring up Andrew Vaughn to be their DH. I can't wait to watch that kid hit. And then, you know what? It'll be the Tony La Russa show.
Yes, we didn't talk about that.
The talk is that he's going to make Tim Anderson into the next Ricky Henderson. I'm not sure I buy that, but
Hey, listen, Chris Archer's up, and he's available if you want him. I mean,
look for him to go back to the north side
there you go.
where
Well,
he was drafted.
well, I have to tell you, boys, this is so much fun. You guys have read the article before, but when Yogi presented me with this idea, and there's some time zone differences with him, that's why it's hard for him to get on. But when he presented me with this idea, it was just, I thought he was nuts. But it has become a very, very great blessing to have my friends on, to be able to talk baseball, right? Who doesn't want to talk baseball? Like all the time, right? We could do this all the time. Viliami and I have conversations sometimes that are half hour long when he's driving someplace. It's all about baseball, nothing about our families. This is great. For you that are watching this, you top fans that are watching this, I want to thank Dave. I want to thank Viliami. I want to thank Jackson for being on again. There will be much more to come in November. Jackson mentioned some topics that we're going to cover. Albert Pujols coming back to the Angels, possibly to break that home run record. Some of the baseball rules as far as getting players in positions. We'll also have segments come spring training that will be talking specifically about different divisions. And so all three of these guys will be joining us sporadically throughout the off season. And then when we're talking about the division, for you top fans, please like this, leave us a comment. If there's something that you want to hear us talk about, by all means, leave us a comment. We'd love to talk about it. As you can see, we've got our resident statisticians in Viliami and Jackson. Jackson pulled out Walter Johnson. I was pretty impressed by that. Next week, Viliami will pull out when Babe Ruth struck out with the sun shining versus not shining and things like that. He's got that data for us. But leave us some comments. Let us know. Also, subscribe. We appreciate you. Thanks so much, and we'll see you soon.